I had a box of old IDE and SATA hard drives sitting around, including some I hadn't accessed since about 1999. I had no idea what was still on them or whether I would ever see those files again. Then I connected them to this little docking station, and suddenly I was looking through parts of my life that had been sitting in that box for years. This is the TCC S862.US hard drive docking station. It accepts both IDE and SATA drives, and I tested both connections. Both worked for me, with the SATA drives being easier to insert and connect, and the IDE drives requiring more careful alignment. If you want to check the current price and details, I've put the Amazon link in the description below, and in a moment I'll explain the one part of connecting an IDE drive that can be a little awkward. I worked through a whole box of old IDE and SATA hard drives, one drive at a time. Every drive that was still functional became accessible. I found old photographs of my family and my dog from more than a decade ago, along with other files I had not seen in years. I also recovered data from the late 1990s for a friend who had lost his copies decades earlier. One detail that gave me a laugh was seeing the old partition names appear in Windows. These were names I had created roughly 20 years ago and completely forgotten about. It was a small thing, but it made the experience feel very personal. Some of the oldest drives did not work, but I already suspected those drives were dead. I do not blame the docking station for that, and this is not a device that can repair a physically failed drive. The station is designed for 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch IDE and SATA drives. It also has memory card slots and a USB hub on the front. My reason for using it was simpler. I wanted to access old IDE and SATA drives without installing each one inside a computer. For my ID drives, the basic process was straightforward. I inserted the drive into the dock, connected the dock's power, connected the USB cable to my computer, and then turned the station on. If the drive itself was functional, Windows recognized it and I could browse the files. One important handling note from the instructions: switch the dock off before inserting or removing a drive, and do not hot swap a drive while data is being transferred. I'll leave the Amazon link below if you want to check the current price and details. The part that takes some patience is inserting an IDE drive. Older IDE drives do not all place the power connection in exactly the same position, so the dock has an adjustable power connector. Sometimes you need to reposition it before everything lines up. My main complaint is that it can be difficult to see the connectors while lowering the drive into the dock. I wish there were a clear window or some other way to see the pins and power connector as they line up. It is not a major problem once you understand how the dock works. But old IDE pins and connectors are not something I want to force. I would rather take a few extra seconds, check the alignment, and make sure the drive settles into place correctly. I think this is most useful for someone who has old IDE or SATA drives and no convenient computer to install them in. It gives you a practical way to check the working drives without opening a PC and connecting each one inside the case. The SATA drives were easier for me to insert and connect than the IDE drives, and both connections worked for me. I did not run speed benchmarks, and my goal was to access the working old drives and retrieve the files that were still there. For that job, my experience has been very positive. The IDE connection takes a little care and the visibility could be better, but the station did what I needed it to do. If you have a box of old IDE or SATA drives and want a straightforward way to find out what is still on the working ones, this has been a genuinely useful tool for me. If you want to check the current price and details, I've put the Amazon link in the description below. If you try it with your own old drives, take your time lining up the connectors, and I hope you find something worth rediscovering.